Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today we're going to look at two of my Phalaenopsis orchids from a grocery store. And because they were purchased from a grocery store, they did not come with any names or ID, but there are a couple friends who were really nice to tell me that they may be Zhujiang Bomb. So I put the name at the bottom of the video for you to see as a reference, but I don't know for sure if they are. Regardless, I think they are super great buy, and I will tell you why in a minute. So these orchids were out of bloom after I got them home for a couple weeks, and then it was end of January 2020 January that I started to see secondary spikes emerging. And this orchid cross is a very vigorous orchid, and let me tell you why. Because after its initial flowers were gone, and obviously as you can see, the original flower spikes were kind of dying back, but at some point it stopped, and I was wondering why. And then end of January 2020, it started to put out secondary spikes on multiple nodes, and I say multiple, and later you'll see that this is the first batch, okay, the first two that I got. It created multiple secondary spikes from all the nodes, so I was really amazed by the vigor of this orchid. And even just from what you see here, from one node it was trying to put out two secondary spikes, but eventually all of the double secondary spikes that coming out of the same node, only one kind of took over and continued to grow to eventually flower, and the other one just kind of hang out until all the bloom dropped, and then it just died back altogether. But you can see there are multiple places with secondary spikes, so I was pleasantly surprised. Because think of it this way: you pay, I think I even paid maybe like $8. I can't remember. It's not expensive. It's definitely under $10 US dollar per plant. And I just think that it's such a great buy because number one, it's super fragrant, and number two, they're not expensive. And because, just soon after all the flowers dropped, because of the nighttime temperature decrease, they all grew out with multiple secondary spikes for me to enjoy immediate, well, soon, not quite immediate, but pretty soon after its initial flowering, it started to create spikes to give me more flowers. So I really think that this is totally a great buy, right? I can enjoy two flowering cycle within such a short amount of time for the price that I pay. So when I come across orchids like these, like great buys or rare orchids, and if I can afford it, in this case it's totally affordable because they're from grocery stores, I would always get two. And by the way, what you're seeing here, this orchid somehow has this double lip or multiple petals going on. It's kind of weird. It looks like it's wearing an extra, like a hat or something, like on top. But anyway, I always get two orchids if I can, because just in case one of them, is having problem, I have another one as a backup. But then also for people who are big about doing experiments to their orchids, just so that they can learn better, they can learn more about orchids, having two is always a good way to do different things with them, to learn how they grow, how they respond to certain watering routine, different dosage of fertilizer, or even different media, different location of the house, etc. But for me, always buying two orchids when I can afford it is just so that I have two, one of them being the backup, so that way like I said earlier, if any one of them is having issues, I have another one as a backup to feel good, to be able to sleep at night. Okay, so this orchid is super fragrant, like I said, but unfortunately I really don't know its real name, so I can only say that it could be that Zhujiang bomb. But either way, I think fragrant orchids are something everybody should have in their collection. Yes, if you order from online nurseries, specialty nurseries, they charge you, $30, $40 or more. But you just kind of have to, when you go to the grocery stores, you just kind of have to take a look and pick them up, have a sniff to see if they have fragrance. And it's just, it's pure, it's not something you always see at grocery stores, but it's possible. For example, my yellow pixies, my 6 yellow pixies, I've purchased them on 3 different occasions from Trader Joe's. This one, these 2 were purchased at my local grocery store chain, HEB. And so it's possible. You just kind of have to be at that grocery store at the right time, right place, right time kind of thing. So these orchids are still currently in its original moss media. I wasn't gonna repot them after their initial flowers were gone because it was winter time, it was wrong time, it was the wrong season to do the repot anyway. And then soon after that, I started to see secondary spikes emerging, so I did not want to disturb it by repotting it. So I think, I made the right decision because they totally rebloomed from their secondary spikes, even though not as showy, but with multiple spikes, I was still getting the same amount of flowers, if not more, from the initial, store-bought condition. And in terms of care, water amount, every time I give it about 1/4 cup of water, and then with the fertilizer, it's about 1/4 strength. And usually, and for these 2 orchids, I stop fertilizer as soon as I see the buds were developing, were plumping up. Then I stop doing that. I know some people swear by continuing the fertilizer routine when your orchids are blooming. I have done some experiment, but the result was not conclusive. I did not see any significant, extension of the flowering period. So I really don't know the truth in that, and I think only more experiment and more, experiment will be able to help me understand that better. And I think it may have to do with different orchids too. You never know, but at least for me, I try not to give too much fertilizer when orchids are in flower, because I believe if you don't give the right amount, or somehow orchids don't like it, they may drop their buds, they may have bud blast. So, the whole purpose of me growing orchid is to see flowers. So if the fact that they're already about to bloom, I much rather pull back on fertilizer so that they can continue to do what they need to do and finish the flowering cycle for me to enjoy flowers. Now, recently I received a couple really interesting questions from my Chinese subscribers, and maybe it's coincidence. I have 3 different people asking me during the same week whether I'm selling any orchid and whether they can purchase any fragrant orchid from my collection. And so I just had to tell them, I'm sorry, I'm just an orchid hobbyist. I'm not in the orchid business. I'm not selling any plant. And all the orchids that I have in my collection, unless they are having serious pest infestation issues or somehow they are beyond salvation, cannot salvage them. Otherwise, I will not easily get rid of them or give them away in any capacity, unless it's maybe a keiki situation or maybe some kind of division from my Cattleya or Oncidium orchids. Otherwise, no, I'm not selling my orchids. I'm sorry. Some of these orchids are, even though they're cheap, they're still cute and I still like them a lot. So So yeah, that's that. But I appreciate those people who ask me the questions of whether I'm in the business of selling orchids, but I'm not in that business. Anyway, overall, I really think these are a good buy, and they totally outperformed the expectation that I have for them. I mean, just look at this. This is like completely a perfect display and an amazing show. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!